Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Olivia Khwaja is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her appearances on episode 450 and 563 of Boundless Body Radio. Olivia Khwaja has been a consumer strategist and marketing expert for large brands for over 20 years. At British Airways, she launched several industry-first services on BA.com and drove up consumer loyalty, resulting in award-winning direct marketing campaigns. At British Gas, she led the consumer engagement program for the national smart meter rollout, the largest infrastructure upgrade in the United Kingdom's history. Olivia has also fixed several chronic health issues by switching her diet to a low carbohydrate lifestyle until she eventually found a carnivore and animal-based lifestyle. Olivia is now a board trustee for the Public Health Collaboration in the United Kingdom, which is a charity focused on educating the public and healthcare community on diet and lifestyle. And she has a particular passion for empowering the younger generation to make informed decisions about their own health. She also hosts the amazing book club featured by our friend and former guest, Dr. Anthony Chafee, which we discussed on episode 563 of Boundless Body Radio. You can find Olivia on Twitter and Instagram at Olivia Khwaja. Olivia, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Thanks, Casey. It's great to be back. I feel like I need a loyalty card or something to come and bring back and redeem some points.
I love that. It is such a joy to chat with you. I've had such a good time chatting with you. And it was funny kind of reflecting on what we would be talking about today. You and I maybe would have never come across each other, even though we were at the same conference at Low Carbohydrate Denver in 2023. We were at the Metabolic Health Symposium in San Diego, but it's not like you find everybody and talk to everybody. There's a lot of people that are there. So it's so cool to think that we were able to meet because of our really quick kind of informal interview that we did as part of the Low Carb Denver 2023 podcast episode that we did. So cool.
I know. And, it was obviously fate because then we've stayed in touch ever since and deepened our connection.
Absolutely. I have very, very fond memories of stepping out of the San Diego conference and going with you and Dr. Chafee to grab some lunch and sitting out there in the warmth with Dr. Rod Taylor, who was also there. It was funny. I remember Dr. Chafee being like, hey, do you want to go to lunch? I remember thinking like, I'm fasting. I just ate a bunch of eggs. Like I was thinking so practically, like, well, I'm not really hungry. And then like 2 seconds later, it was like, duh, dummy, of course you're gonna go to lunch with Olivia and Dr. Chafee. Of course you're gonna go.
I'm glad you did because that was a good memory I have of sitting in the sunshine, sitting on the dock of the bay, and watching all the kind of the seagulls come in while we ate our burgers.
Yeah, it was so nice. The restaurants there were very nice to accommodate. Everybody knew that a low carbohydrate conference was coming, and so people were probably not going to be ordering burgers with buns and everything, and they were very happy to accommodate. And yes, that was a very nice, warm, sunny moment on an otherwise very soggy kind of a weekend as a hurricane ended up blowing in. It wasn't much of a hurricane, but it was still a lot of water that fell.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I managed to literally take off as it was coming in. So that was lucky.
Good call. Well, it's been a while since we've had you on. We hosted you in December when we talked primarily about the book club, like we mentioned in the introduction. But we talked so much about the book club. We didn't actually talk about you and any updates you might have. How are you doing since we last chatted about you about a year ago? Like, how are you finding the diet? Do you still find that you're enjoying a carnivorous lifestyle? Like how are things today?
Really good. I mean, it's probably a bit of a boring update. It's just all ticking along, and life is good. The kids are really integrated into the lifestyle as well, and I guess it's just all business as usual. We just wake up in the morning, we do our fasted workouts, we might have something during the day, otherwise it's a steak for dinner, and there's not that much more excitement to it than that, apart from the fact that we absolutely love what we eat. But there isn't there isn't too much to report. I think once you get to this stage, I had my 2-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago now. When you get to this stage, you're just in kind of maintenance mode, and you think about many other things in your life, but you probably don't think about food as much, or think about any of the kind of the costs and the pain and all of the other things that come along with a normal diet. So no, we're all thriving and everyone's doing really well health-wise as well.
That's great. I sometimes feel bad for my clients when they ask me like, hey, what's new with you? Like anything new and exciting? And I'm like, no, nothing that new and exciting. It's just got a really kind of mellow, awesome life, and I really enjoy it, and I kind of eat the same things, and it kind of settles out. And yeah, again, as I was thinking about this interview, I was also thinking like for your kids, if you'd have told me as a kid, like, hey, you have to eat a carnivore diet, you can't eat carbohydrates, I might be pretty pissed. But I really like the approach you guys took, where the kids just eventually said, like, hey, you guys aren't eating vegetables. Why do we have to eat these vegetables? And that was how they kind of cut them out. Like, what an amazing gift to any child.
Yeah, yeah, that part was very easy. The part where they had to stop eating anything sweet, that was a bit harder. But they got there in the end, and I'm not saying they've been perfect, because I mean, they both still eat fruit anyhow, but even just getting rid of the processed sugar, that has, it's had its ups and downs. It's not easy. And my son has started a new school last September, and so he's made new friends. He wants to fit in. A lot of them are, they're all together today, eating, probably having lots of sweets around, and I know he's going to have to, navigate his way through that. But I don't put him any pressure on him at all. And I do think, and my daughter, who's a few years older, has almost like come through the journey herself. Like, she has had a couple of times where she fell off the wagon, and she said, it's just too much at school. Everyone's eating croissants, and I wanted to have a little bit, so I did. And like, things like that have happened, and then she's been off the wagon and then got back on herself. And I think that's really important, that she has seen the difference when she is eating the right way, not the right way, and making her own mind up that, look, I don't want to feel like this, when I know I can feel what I've already experienced. And so she's got herself back onto it, and she just said to me yesterday, Mum, I feel so much better now that I'm back on and doing well, and I'm not even tempted by things anymore. I'm really feeling like a lot better this time around. So, it's always going to be, as long as the general trend is in a positive direction for them, I'm happy. And as long as, we're doing it 70-80% of the time as well as we can, then I think that's more than any of us have had the chance to do in our lifetimes. And so they're definitely better off in any scenario from where we were. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's all going well. It's really hard when you're on carnivore and you've already talked about all the benefits many times, and they were amazing. And then someone said, how's it going? But well, it's still amazing. That doesn't mean it's gone anywhere else, but it's just, you don't know what else to say. Like, it just carries on. There isn't an
Yeah.
end date to this. It's just living your life and thriving, basically.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great answer. As I recall, when we were talking about your kids the first time that you and I chatted, we were talking about your daughter in particular, how her sports were way better. And I believe her skin would also be way better. And so that was kind of a self motivator. So I was going to ask, like, when the kids slip up, they do notice, like, they feel a difference. And, regardless of trying to like fit in or do what the other kids are doing, they are like self motivated to get back onto the diet, and they do notice a difference when they are.
Absolutely, yeah. And certainly my daughter does, in her skin and that type of thing. And so, the only, we don't try to be too strict about it. The only thing my hard thing is I won't have any of that food in the house, so they won't access it here. So it's when they're in other situations. And I see that as really the best I can do to give them a chance of not having, because if you're an addict to something, it's not helpful to have it sitting around and tempting you. They don't want it in the house. It's not like they miss it when they're at home. Um, and they're just pretty happy just making their own food and cooking their own eggs and making their little pancakes out of cheese and egg and eating that every day. And they don't think about that kind of food anymore. So, they cook everything from scratch, they make it themselves. It's a really easy life. It's really just when they're outside of this environment that they may come across those kind of temptations, and then they're gonna have to figure out how to deal with that and make the best choices for themselves. And I think that's the only way to get them to a place as an adult where they understand and are empowered about their own metabolic health.
Yeah. Okay. You brought up something else that I find very interesting. I'm finding myself having to talk about this more and more. I didn't necessarily think this was a thing, but it's turning out to be a thing. And I think we all need to be a little bit more clear about what we're talking about when we talk about a carnivore diet. You mentioned when we're following this lifestyle 70 to 80% of the time. I've always thought of a carnivore diet, always defined a carnivore diet as a carnivore in nature eats 70 to 75, depending on the definition that you follow, percent of their calories from animal products. And I kind of just thought like that was it, and we could just talk about that. And whether you called it meat centric, animal based, carnivore, whatever term you used, if you were mostly kind of in that realm, you didn't have to worry about being 100% strict. And there seems to be this like subfaction in the community that's like, if you're not 100%, then you can't call it carnivore anymore. Again, to me, that was never a thing, but it seems to be a thing. How do you think about that? Like, have you noticed that that's kind of becoming more talked about and it's creating more like division in the community? Like, how do you think about that, and how do you respond to that?
So I agree with you that the technical definition is 70% or somewhere along those lines. That's certainly how I understood it. My experience with the carnivore community is people tend to go all out full carnivore for more than 70%. So I think the 70% is like the minimum, right? So people are progressing past that. I don't have a problem with people calling themselves carnivore if they are 70%. I feel that's totally fine. I mean, that's such a major change from where the rest of society is right now. You kind of are a carnivore if you're eating 70% from animal products, in a way. And if people want to be stricter, then that's great, and go ahead and do it. But I wouldn't say that you should consider someone who has any other products in their diet as not carnivore. I guess there's also the definition of ketovore, where some people say if you have any plants, then that you should be considered ketovore, not carnivore. But I guess there's a bit of an overlap between those two definitions, and it shouldn't be like a negative thing that you use against people and try and stick them in a box and kick them out of a box. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you've got better tabs on the book club than I do, since you're in with these people all the time and you're hosting the book club. I wonder what they would think. Like I feel like in the community we're not doing as good as we could be to be very welcoming and accept anybody regardless of where they are in the journey, by trying to ketovore, carnivore, animal based, whatever. Like it's all seems like semantics. And the main message that I hope we're trying to promote in this community is all of us can be doing a better job, like you said, of moving towards an animal base and understanding what that entails and how that impacts the environment and the planet and ethics and all those things. I hope our message is more welcoming to people that want to try this, versus like, oh, you had an onion with your burger last week, and so you're out of the club now. You know what I mean? I'm starting to get a little bit of that vibe, and I hope we're not pushing in that direction too far.
No, I agree with you. I think dogma is so unnecessary and so destructive, really, for us to be like that. I mean, it's just about people's health at the end of the day, and if it's better than it was before, then great. So many people are not even going to be getting to this stage of diet. They'll be keto their whole life if they're lucky, low carb if they're even lucky as well, and most people won't maybe even get to that. So let's just be happy that people are eating better.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Before we get an update on the book club and an upcoming conference that you're going to be attending, let's learn about you again. It's been a while since we've heard your story, but tell us how you were able to find all of this to begin with.
Wow. So I was from a very different background, nothing to do with nutrition, all in the business world. And one day said, I've had enough of all this high flying, high pressure nonsense, and I'm going to take some time out for myself. And while I was doing that, I decided I was going to do few different projects. And I decided to research nutrition because my parents had passed away 10 years prior from, between them, type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's. And I always thought those were hereditary, and that I was going to be, another statistic of that, of those diseases. And thought, well, maybe I'll just do a little bit of research. Maybe I'll just see if there's something I can do. Maybe I can, add some blueberries to my breakfast bowl or something like that to kind of give me some antioxidants. And what I found in doing some research quite quickly was that none of those diseases have to exist. And that was quite a revelation to someone who'd nursed two very sick people through those diseases for many years and had not given one thought to what they were eating throughout that entire period. And as someone with a background in strategy and kind of population level education and marketing, it felt to me like this is a huge miscarriage of justice, and it's also a communications challenge. It's a lot of lack of information that is out there, and I would like to play a part in actually bringing that, correcting that really as much as possible. And that's when I was became aware of the Public Health Collaboration. They're a charity here in the UK, and they were looking for trustees that had a more commercial background to help grow the charity. So that's it was almost a bit, it was like serendipity when I saw that, because it was not long after I had decided to do something like this. So it just felt like my calling. And so yeah, I was really pleased to move direction and pivot in this way, and to use my background and skills towards something which has so much more meaning than a bottom line or a big corporate. So yeah, that's kind of got me on my journey. I mean, I actually started off as keto for 2 years, and as soon as that clicked in my head, I think I tell people I was sprinting one day trying to figure out all this diet stuff, and Eric Berg was in my ear saying, "Good luck burning fat if you've got sugar in your blood." And then I was like, what? How did I not even think of that, link before? I thought it was just all about calories and how much you've spent versus how much you've taken in at the end of the day, and someone would tot it up, and that would be whether or not you lost weight. And so that kind of blew my mind. And from then on, I just went keto the next day and had 2 years of that, and then 2 years now of carnivore. So it just keeps getting better. And I just really, everything for me is about human potential. And, no matter how well you can do in your journey and how much people can watch you thrive and do well, it's very hard for people to take on necessarily what you've learned. And so I'm really interested in how we can help people. I really believe in the potential for human beings, for humankind. And I see so many people who are not at their potential and not thriving, and just resign themselves to that and don't actually think there's anything they can do about it. And I'd love people to think differently and be more inspired and have hope and think about life as an amazing chance and opportunity to figure out who they are and what they can do, and not be suboptimal like so many people are, like literally nearly everyone, 90% of the population. So I'm really hopeful that we can crack this. I do think something will happen, and the dam will burst, and people will start to figure this out. So that's what's keeping me optimistic about it all.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope this message is getting out and more people are finding it, and that yeah, at some point we're going to reach a threshold where they can't keep this information suppressed anymore. And as we talked about earlier in this conversation, I asked you if you had any updates. You said, no, it's pretty boring. I feel really great. Sometimes we take it for granted, all the different things that we notice when we are living this way. We take for granted all the things that we have left behind. What are some of the health kind of improvements that you've noticed that maybe surprised you about going onto this diet? First keto and then carnivore eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw, when I went keto, it was mainly weight loss and still felt a bit better, probably linked to the weight loss. When I went from keto to carnivore, it was a whole other set of benefits. Like my fitness performance went up. I kind of halved my time on my normal bike ride that I do every day, and it didn't make any sense. I thought I'd kind of got that wrong, but it seemed to just happen. And then so many like physical benefits that I never expected. Like my teeth got like whiter, my eyes got whiter, my skin got way better. People said I looked younger. I had this annoying toenail fungus that was on my toe for about 8 years from running. And it just disappeared one day, and I couldn't figure out how that had happened. My nails got stronger. I mean, tiny little things that you never associated with being a problem to start with. And that's why I was kind of in two minds about whether to try carnivore, because I didn't have, I saw it as something for people with an autoimmune issue, or some, potentially mental health issue, or some of the kind of reasons where people at a desperation stage and need to try something. And I didn't have any of those reasons, but yet the changes were so profound. And I remember waking up one day, looking outside and going, oh my God, I just love being alive. Like I feel so happy. And why do I feel this happy? Like something must have happened. I don't remember what it was yesterday, but there was nothing. It was just a Wednesday, and I just felt amazing. And so, there is obviously mental health benefits for people who are really struggling. It can make such a big difference. For some people, it's the only thing that's going to work. So it feels to me like such a waste that people don't know and have a choice and don't get a chance and don't even think about it. So, that for me is what's wrong. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But know that you can do it, try it, and you have an option, you have a tool that means that you don't have to just resign yourself to feeling, 30% of what you could feel like for your whole entire existence.
I love that. The thing that I connected with the most is just you feel amazing for no reason. It's just a Wednesday. Like that can be enough to feel happy. And if you've lived with anxiety or depression or just not feeling that amazing feeling, to be able to have that pretty much all the time with very few exceptions is pretty amazing. It's definitely very motivating to stay on the diet. It makes sugar seem very unappealing. And last time we talked, like we said in the introduction in episode 563, we talked about the book club. I don't even know if I asked you, how did you and Dr. Chafee start getting together to be able to do this book club? Eventually, it kind of became something that you were running. I know how busy Dr. Chafee is, but how did that all come to be?
Well, we were kind of working together for quite early on, good 2 years, over 2 years now. I had a situation with my mother-in-law who had this kind of pancreatic insufficiency or something that they call it. And I could not find out an answer as to why she couldn't change her diet, because all her medical support staff were saying to her, you can't do anything about low carb, you have to continue with insulin, you have to eat a high carb diet. I reached out to him because he had also cured his mum of diabetes. And so I messaged him and said, can you please explain to me what this pancreatic insufficiency is and why that means that she can't go low carb? And he replied and explained it physiologically, and then I kind of got it that there wasn't any reason, basically. And so he really helped with that, and kind of walked us through it and all the kind of medical conversations that needed to be had at the time. And we just kind of started working together from there. I helped him with lots of his own profile raising and social media activity. Sorry, Casey, I've got someone at my door.
No worries.
I'm gonna have to pause. Hang on one sec.
Take your time.
So we just continued working together from then, and I helped him with a few things that he was doing, and around raising his profile and kind of communications and how to get a message across, and then he set up his Patreon, and so we worked together on that. And I've been looking after his community and running the book club for coming up to 2 years now. So yeah, it's just been something that's just worked well for both of us. And I really enjoy community side of being in a community, like actually helping people and actually thinking about how to keep them engaged with the diet and what they need to know and how to kind of coach them through it. So it's been really rewarding to do that kind of thing.
That's great. I was going to ask you what your favorite part about being a part of the book club was. Is it the community aspect?
I think so. I think it's because we're all so close. We're all going on a journey together, and that's just a fun thing to do. Because everyone gets to know each other along the way, and we know about each other's lives. We know what's going to be interesting to other people, and we kind of pull that out of what we're reading and highlight it to each other. So I think it's just doing things in a group is just always more fun than doing it on your own. And for many people in the book club, it's also their main event of the week. And it's hard when you're in this kind of carnivore experience, because the real world can be difficult to engage with in the same way that maybe you did before. And a lot of times we're getting judged for things, and it's difficult to eat out and be maybe as social as everyone has always been in the past. And actually this little book club is a little haven for people to still have that connection with people. Like, people get them, they know that they belong, and they're going to be accepted, and everyone is interested in learning. Really, I mean, people who are in our kind of community are just so curious and so interested in knowing more about the world and about our bodies and about how things work. And again, that's quite contrasted, I think, to maybe people who are out there are not thinking about these things. And so it's just nice to be around people like that, who are curious and are interested and want to challenge and want to understand more. So I think it's the community that makes book club work so well. Everyone just being so similar and needing each other at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's the most important part about the conferences that we do as well, whether people attend in person or virtually, is you finally get to this place of like, okay, everybody is like me. I don't feel like the weirdo who's just ordering the burger patties because I'm with three other weirdos ordering burger patties. It feels a lot better. It feels like you're not the insane one all the time, which, yeah, I really love. I love the book club. I wish I could attend more, but I try to promote it as much as I can because every time I've been able to participate, it's such a welcoming and kind community, and it's so cool to see the people out there on their journeys and progressing as much as they are. Really incredible. We do have a conference coming up that I want you to talk about, but first, could you kind of remind us, what is the public health collaboration in the United Kingdom? How did that come about? How did your involvement with that come about? You already mentioned it, they needed help with marketing, you kind of fit that mold, but what's going on with the foundation today? Let's get an update.
Yeah, so the Public Health Collaboration is a UK-based charity. It's been around about 8 years now. It was set up by someone called Sam Feltham, who's our CEO at the moment, and he has he managed to get a number of doctors that were working in our National Health Service and in other places together, who all agreed that there needs to be a different approach taken to how medical treatment is looked at and how it's administered, and that we needed to move more towards preventative lifestyle approaches. And so public health collaboration was born out of that recognition by all those individuals 8 years ago. Dr. David Unwin, who I know you know, and Jed Unwin were part of the kind of the founding group of doctors, along with many others. And it had a good few years of being, I'd say, more targeted towards the medical community, because that's just kind of the natural audience that came with those doctors, and towards healthcare practitioners. And like many conferences still are, I think, in the low carb space, they're kind of geared up for talking to those that are practicing in the healthcare space. What we are trying to do is say, well, we want to, our vision as an organization is for everyone in society to have good metabolic health. And for that to happen, it could either go through education of medical resources and staff, or we could also educate the public. And we're very much in the direction now of shifting towards shifting towards the public and focusing on them as who we educate, because we have, a lot of the time that we spent in the beginning was going up to those that are in the decision-making seats, in the powers that be, and saying, look at what we've done. Like David Unwin went and sat with the health secretary in the UK and said, look how much I have saved on my drug budget this year. If you were to multiply that out to every practice in the whole country, you'd be saving £270 million. That's a huge saving for the NHS, and that's one tiny little change. So he has, we've knocked on those doors, we've had those conversations, and nothing changes because there isn't really a groundswell of need and anyone expecting it to change. And obviously there are pressures in the other direction as well from kind of corporate agendas. So we know that the only way to really, unlock this is to have a grassroots movement that takes hold, and that gets us to a tipping point where people have to pay attention to this. And that's why we are so focused on the public now, more so than we ever have been, and still healthcare practitioners as well, but both those sets of audiences. And that's why we kind of see ourselves as a collaboration of everyone, everyone in society that wants to see the situation that we're in, where nearly 90% of our population is going to or is suffering from a metabolic illness. We want to see people really understand that problem and be part of the solution and demand change, because that's the only way it's going to happen. So we're very much shifting gear towards that. And so a lot of what I've been doing has been to kind of try and help educate people, or try and help provide resources that people can educate themselves, more importantly. And we have a website which has lots of content on it, Dr. Unwin's sugar infographics, and many other great resources that people download now from all over the world. We have a YouTube channel which has got great talks on it. And that's all free. And there's even a course on how you can fix your diet on our YouTube channel, so that nobody has to pay to access this very important basic information about how to be healthy. And so we're doing that as a large component of what we do. But then what we're also doing is running projects with the with the system and in the system to change the system. So we're doing a grassroots up in the system itself, in the National Health Service. So we've got something called the Lifestyle Club, which is a coaching service for people who are pre-diabetic and diabetic. And we offer that to different GP practices. They refer their patients onto it, and we help them reverse their type 2 diabetes. So that's something we're scaling up and rolling out, and that is making the change that we want to see. So hopefully in the future, it will be anyone who goes to their GP will have, signs of pre-diabetes, will get referred onto this and quickly reversed out of that situation. And all of that's based on Dr. Unwin's approach to how to manage type 2 diabetes. So we have that program, the Lifestyle Club. We also have one called Liberate, which is a food addiction service and helps coach people out of severe food addiction. And that's something we're piloting at the moment. And it's definitely, a key part of what we want to, to offer people who really do struggle with the real addiction side of particularly ultra processed food addiction. There was a report done last year, I think, which said about 14% of adults have a food addiction, and which is similar to how much there is the level of addiction that people have to alcohol and to nicotine and other drugs. But the only difference with this food addiction statistic is that there's a child equivalent, which is 12%. And that's really, a concerning thing, that we are giving such an addictive substance to our children as well. So we're setting this problem up for the future, and we really want to try and reverse the food addiction completely and get it recognized as an addiction as well, which is something Jen Unwin is working on. And on the theme of kids, we have a major project called Real Food Rebellion, which is designing a new education module that's going to be available to schools, and we're piloting that at the moment. And basically it's going to be, if you're a kid in a classroom, you'll get a lesson which will explain to you what ultra processed foods are, explain to you how to read food labels and how to identify what is good and not good on a food label, and just get the next generation educated and ready to have, the control over their own health that they should have before they get addicted to things. And that's not to say kids are just going to do exactly what we want, of course not, but at least they've got the information, at least the seed has been planted early. They bother to look at food labels, which many adults still don't do. And so we're really trying to drive society towards that kind of culture. So these programs that we're doing are very much, we don't just talk about what people need to do, we want to actually change the system as well. And that's what makes our charity quite unique, I think, because we're going for the public as well as practitioners. We're doing all grassroots, and we don't accept any industry funding. So we are reliant on this grassroots community supporting us to get us there. So that's really the kind of the direction that PHC is going in at the moment. And if that is, if that's something people want to support, we would love support. We need support, and the main way to support us is to come to our conference, which I can talk a bit more about in a minute. But that's kind of what PHC is all about, and we really do welcome people trying to support our cause.
That's incredible. What an ambitious number of different programs that you're doing. And I think it's equal parts depressing, but also hopeful that you have had to shift from trying to change the industry and the system and, the medical community versus going to, like you said, a more grassroots movement and just try to connect with people in the community who are suffering and maybe fed up with some of that stuff and don't like to hear the message that they have to be on medications and procedures and their disease is only going to get worse over time. What an amazing job. How are you feeling about all of this? Do you feel like these programs have been successful so far?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's early days for a lot of them, but they are, proving, like certainly the Lifestyle Club, we are trying to run a study at the moment to actually prove the results are superior to any other low calorie version of that type of coaching that you could go on. And I think once we have this kind of evidence, built up, it will become easier, and we'll get it rolled out more. So I think we've got the model right. Like, I think we're targeting the right part of the system, because going to the top is going to get us nowhere, and actually offering it to GP practices, and many of the healthcare practitioners are very open to this at the grassroots level as well. So it's like grassroots public, grassroots healthcare practitioners who are fairly open to this type of thing. And we think that we just need to focus on that and make the change that way to real people's lives.
Amazing. Well, tell us about this upcoming conference. Hearing about last year's, I was so jealous that I wasn't able to make it last year. I won't be able to make it this year as well, but last year's sounded absolutely amazing. Tell us what's going to be involved in this year's conference.
Okay, so yeah, so our annual conference, which is our big moment in the calendar every year, is looking really good this year. It's we've got a fantastic lineup of people coming along. We have a focus on, we always have some level of focus on type 2 diabetes, which is going to be this year is going to include Gary Torbs and Dr. Unwin and Ken Berry and others debating how to get us out of this epidemic of type 2 diabetes. We then have a bit of a focus on kids. That's definitely a theme coming through. So the schools program that I talked about, they're going to be explaining exactly what they're doing. And we have Leah Keith supplementing that with her personal story on what she wished she knew when she was a kid as well, a teenager, and hopefully helping people to understand that there are real, consequences to your health that can come from the decisions you make when you're pretty young on what you eat. We have a whole focus on mental health, and that's very much an emerging discussion that's coming through in most conferences now in the low carb space, because there is so much interest and hope and also funding that's going into a lot of studies happening. And we have Dr. Rachel Brown and Dr. Ian Campbell, who's running a study in Edinburgh University on bipolar and the ketogenic diet. So they're talking through all the latest developments there and basically answering the question, can we fix mental health with food? And we then have a final part of that kind of kids theme of how do we save the next generation from the dangers of ultra processed foods, and that is going to be chaired by Jane Buxton. It's going to have Ben Bickman on the panel. I don't know if you know Eddie Abu, who's becoming quite popular on social media.
I love following that guy on social media.
He's coming along, and he's a great supporter of our charity as well. And so that's going to be an interesting conversation for everyone to have, because Eddie obviously has a very different role that he's playing in helping educate the next generation about ultra processed foods to many of us, but he's making such a huge impact. And so those are some of the components. And then the last two main things are that on each day we're going to have a debate, and we're trying to pick topics that we think people are going to be interested in hearing, both sides contrasted, juxtaposed together, where you can more easily understand and compare the different arguments and make your own mind up. And so on the first day, that's going to be answering the question, does red meat shorten lifespan? And that is going to include Dr. Anthony Chafee, Professor Ben Bickman, and the head nutritionist at the Zoe institution. I don't know if you know Zoe is part of kind of Tim Spector's work, that they have a lot of work and nutritionist service that they provide to people to move people onto healthy food, but very much focused on more Mediterranean approaches, could we say. So I think that discussion will get onto the blue zones and what is the right way to eat for longevity. And does that include red meat? And is red meat a good or bad factor in that ambition? And so that's the first debate. The second debate is, does cholesterol cause heart disease? And it is pretty much the age-old big one that that people still can't quite put away and conclude, but we still do have pretty much the whole world divided into thinking one way or the other, and there's no consensus on that at the moment. Obviously, there's emerging science that's coming through from people like Dave Feldman, so he's going to be presenting that, discussing that. And we have Dr. Peter Landsberg, who is a pretty well known in the lipidology world as one of the original thought leaders. He has set up databases on lipids and how to manage them across the whole of the Netherlands. He's been one of the original founders of all of that. He has a major kind of statin newsletter that he sends out every week. So he is someone who's very much in the establishment of the current thinking, and is someone that we want to really welcome coming along, and actually talking to this type of thing about us, because it's really hard to get people to come and have this open type of discussion. And just on that panel as well, we have Dr. Adrian Sotomoto, who works with Dave Feldman, and also a consultant cardiologist from Liverpool University, Professor Mike Fisher. So it's a kind of a classic lipidologist, a classic cardiologist, and Dave Feldman and Adrian talking about what they think could be going on in certain contexts as to when it isn't necessary to always prescribe statins, and there can be conditions in which the context is important as to whether or not LDL's a concern or not. Story, there is a different side to this, and it's important to consider that we may not know everything that we think we know right now as society, and we've got to keep an open mind, and we've got to keep learning, and being as open-minded about these types of things as possible. And that's really what we're trying to achieve for the general public.
Yeah, well, that all sounds wonderful and very, very relevant. I have conversations daily with my clients about things like cholesterol. It is the one thing that everybody wants to know about. And the thing that I appreciate about what I've heard in the past about these panel discussions and debates that you've had is everything has been very, very respectful. There could have been a great opportunity for something like last year's discussion to be very unrespectful, but everybody, debating whether, animal foods, plant foods kill you, whether, animal foods are necessary for life. The debate that was held last year was a really wonderful example of how we can all talk about these things and get them out in the open without necessarily like throwing rotten tomatoes at each other.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. We just think it's so important. You can't move science forward unless you have these discussions, unless you come at it with a scientific approach, which is that anything is possible. Let's explore, let's be curious. And we just want to instill that in people, and hopefully get people curious, get people thinking that we don't know it all. And we are absolutely resolute that all of this will be done in the kind of, the way that it was done last year, which is that it's, an equal amount of time, airtime for people, and that we will have as much back and forth as we can, because I think that's where the real, nuggets can come out, and we can really find where people are different or similar. And we'll run it very, very much like last year. We might make a few tweaks this year, but the plants debate last year did really well. People were so interested in it. And if, maybe for some people who are very entrenched in this community, it wasn't that much new information, but for many people out there, it's going to be, a source of interest, that are just starting their journey and have just heard all these different things, and they just want someone to sit down and explain both sides, and so they can figure out what's going on. So we're really trying to tap into that mass need, and hopefully we can achieve the same thing this year. We feel very confident we can.
I love that. You said something very interesting, and maybe this is a very obvious question. You said it's sometimes difficult to find people in the establishment that want to come to these conferences and be hosted. If you're listening and not watching, Olivia just gave the biggest eye roll. That was perfect. We also know that there was like a big name that dropped out of the conference, who I was frankly a little surprised was even coming. We don't need to mention his name here, but pretty much anybody in the low carb community will know him for being kind of a doofus. I don't know. But anyway, why do you think it's so difficult to get people who have that established view to come to these type of conferences? If they have the knowledge and the wisdom and everybody knows that they're right about these things, why aren't they more than willing to show up to all of these things?
That is a very, very good question. That is literally the £1,000,000 question as far as I'm concerned. But it has been the hardest part of doing, of getting this, to work, has been to find people who are willing to cross the aisle and have a conversation about what should be their life work, right? Like very much in their kind of their strong suit of knowledge. I think people are just no, I think there's a combination of things, and depending on who it is, I think some people are happy to do it, but there's very few of them. And no matter what we think about them, I'm really grateful that they're happy to do it, because I think that says something. But most people, 99%, and we have spoken to many and probably most that you would ever have heard of, will be a combination of perhaps fear and not wanting to be exposed in a live environment, maybe not wanting to, I mean, availability obviously can be a bit of a factor when we're over here in the UK and not everyone is in this area, but we did offer Zoom options to pretty much everyone as well. So it hasn't really been, you know, a hurdle. I just don't think people are at the place where they're ready to have this discussion, and I don't know what you want to read into that as to what that might mean. But it just is not easy to get people to agree to do this. And so we're very, very grateful for the people who have agreed to do it. You know, we're not saying that we know the answer here. We're just saying we should have a discussion, and it could turn out to uncover things that we haven't even thought about. And that is the name of the game. That is us exploring science and trying to move the conversation forward. We don't have a specific agenda. We just want to see progress. And yeah, I don't know how else to answer that, but yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, that's a great way to answer it. I just got back from Dave Feldman's conference, the COSI conference in Las Vegas, and we had a panel discussion. It was an hour and a half with cardiologists who had different opinions on that kind of, statin use and that kind of thing, including Dr. Cromwell and Dr. Nadir Ali. And I just don't think it's very comfortable for people in the establishment to get the kinds of questions that they get, even from the lay public, like people that are just showing up to this conference because they want to learn about this stuff. They're not in the medical establishment, and they ask incredibly wise and diverse questions that I don't think these people are used to answering. So I'm with you. I completely respect and love anybody who's willing to show up to these things. And I also understand why there's not many people, and you have to ask a lot of people to get anybody to agree to it. So again, huge respect to them. Be very curious to watch that kind of thing. But I agree. I think it becomes really uncomfortable to be faced with some of the questions that people have because they've got good questions.
Yeah, I think so. And and if you're not close to what's going on as well, you may feel like you're going to get caught out, and you may still believe that what you think is right, but you're just not able to articulate yourself. And some people just don't like debates. Debates can be, a difficult thing for, depending on what kind of person you are, to really thrive in. And sometimes people who don't do well on that may still have the stronger argument, but just not able to articulate it. So there are all those factors as well. But we're just, a lot of the time the people we're asking are people who are pretty forthright and really confident in their views, certainly in their own space. So I don't know if that's that much of a factor, but I'm sure it plays a role.
Yeah, well, that's really well said. And I almost like to think of it as more of like a discussion than an actual debate. I don't think there was much in the way of argument in the past when you guys have held these. And so I hope that will be the case. Again, for people who can attend online, we're going to release this episode just a few days before the conference. So you've got people who can attend in person, which is great. Let's talk about how people can do that. And let's also talk about the people around the world like myself who are not going to be able to be there in person. How can we also participate?
Yeah, absolutely. So in person, we've got tickets on our website. They're selling at phcuk.org/conference. And yeah, you can come along for 1 day, 2 days, and there's a VIP dinner on the Saturday, which would be good fun. But for anyone who's not able to join us in London, and by the way, if you are in the UK and you can come, then it's really worth it, because every single time we have had one of these, the main feedback we get is people just feel on a high, inspired, and looking to kind of conquer the world. And we actually do have a Monday as well tagged onto the Saturday main event of the Saturday and Sunday, where we're calling it Ideas into Action, and we're bringing along as many people who want to join us on the Monday as possible, and saying, all right, well, now what do we do with all this inspiration? Let's capture the magic. Let's think about how you change your own nutrition. Let's think about how we change society. So that's what we're doing on the Monday as well, which we haven't done before, and I don't think many conferences do. So we're kind of feeling our way through that one. So if you can come, then please do, and it really helps support us. If you can't, and you are just interested to listen in from anywhere across the world, then we have live stream tickets which are on sale and will continue to be on sale up until the event. You'll get access to an app where you can watch all of those talks. and it doesn't have to be live. So you actually do retain access to that app for a couple of weeks afterwards, and the talks will still be there. So if you can't, literally watch it live, you have a bit of flexibility around that. So I think that makes it a bit easier for people who need to do things, around their own schedule. But yeah, it doesn't stay on forever, but you'll still have access to it for a little while. Eventually it will be, they'll be on our YouTube, but that'll be much later on. So it's really worth getting the live stream if you can. And it supports a great charity and a great cause. So if you want to give something to charity, this is a chance to get something great back at the same time, and try and change what's going on in the world of nutrition as we know it.
That's amazing. Well, that's going to be a very high value for people. And I always get a little bit jealous when I see a conference going on in the world and my social media is just filled with all of my favorite people and former guests of the show, people I've gotten to meet like yourself. You definitely FOMO. I will experience that, but I'll also be tuning in online. I can't wait to hear about how everything goes and how the debate was. I'm sure this will not be our last discussion. We'll have to have you back on after the conference to see how everything went. The brainstorming session itself is a wonderful idea. I think that's such a great idea to capture all that excitement and get those people together to kind of talk about things and how practically we can all do better and move forward. So I will be very keen to learn about that. What an amazing conference. It's always great to catch up with you, Olivia. I love your work and I love what you're doing out there and using your talents and your resources to be able to help push this message forward. Probably not as quickly as any of us would like it to go, and not systemically the way we would like it to be, but at the grassroots level, it's really amazing work that you're doing. And we're just so grateful for you and that you take time to be on our show. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work? And one more time, where can people go to sign up for the conference and attend either virtually or in person?
Yeah, okay. So for PHC, our website is phcuk.org. And if you go on there, there's just tons of stuff to, that may be of use, kind of sugar infographics by David Unwin, and many other kind of like diet related resources. So that's our website. You can also get your conference tickets there if you go to the same website address /conference. And otherwise we are all over social media. So on Twitter and Instagram we are PHC UK org, and on Facebook and YouTube we are Public Health Collaboration. So if you can't do anything else, then follow us. We really do need support in every way we can get it. And then as for myself, I'm Olivia Khwaja, and I'm mainly on Instagram, a little bit on X or Twitter. And yeah, I also have my son has a little Instagram account called Real Food Kids on Instagram as well. He puts his little recipes up. Still doing that.
My favorite Instagram account.
Oh, that's a nice endorsement. So yeah.
That's awesome. We'll tag all of that. It's my favorite Instagram account as much as I love my NHL highlights page or the Formula One pages that I follow, or following you and delicious recipes and delicious food to find. I love your kids page. So we'll be sure to link all of that in the notes. Olivia, like I said, it's just so great to catch up with you and learn about all the work you're doing, to get an update on all the project that the organization is doing. It's just so wonderful. So thank you again so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey, for having me on again and for being so supportive of public health collaboration.
Absolutely. You guys are doing amazing work. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.